Chapter 11. It was a sound on the street outside that finally roused Ranofer. He sprang into the dark passageway and flattened himself against the wall, listening to footsteps draw nearer, then pass and begin to recede down the street. Letting out his breath with a rush, he stumbled back to the door. Somehow he must mend that seal. He knelt to examine it. It had broken in the middle when he forced open the bolt. A lump still clung to the bolt itself, and a smaller one to the socket on the doorframe. When the door was closed, a jagged crack would show plainly between the two lumps. The clay that had filled it was now scattered in dry crumbs on the floor. Standing in the passage, he closed the door gently, and in the process shut off every glimmer of the moonlight, which was all coming from Gaboo's room. He could feel the crack, but he could do no more than see it. He could no more than see it than he could see through the wall at his side. There was no help for it. He must have a light. He had no idea where Gaboo kept his fire, drill, and tinder. They had not turned up in any box or chest in his room. It would take time to search for them, more time to kindle a torch, and more time was what Ranofer did not have. He must fetch a light. That meant venturing outside into the street and the Keft-haunted night. This time there is a moon, at least, he thought, and it is not really so late or dark or silent as the other night. This time I shall be braver. I have to be braver, and there has to be a torch burning somewhere. Quickly he opened the door again, gathered the scattered crumbs into a little pile with the aid of the moonlight. It was dim enough at best, and he had to feel anxiously into the shadows to be sure he had not missed some morsel of clay. Then he flew down down the stairs and into the nearest of the storerooms. Again, by touch, he located the oil pot in which several torches soaked, headed down. He snatched one, and shivering with dread, forced his reluctant feet across the courtyard and out the gate. A glance showed one torch burning in a wall bracket by a doorway far down the canyon-like street. He ran silently toward it, expecting each moment to hear the eerie flutter of a Keft's invisible wings, or feel its fleshless fingers on his throat. Once he glimpsed a moving shadow near an alleyway and sped faster, telling himself forcefully that it was a cat or Keft. By the time he reached the distant doorway, he was weak with fright, but he thrust his torch into the flame, made himself wait while it caught well, and whispering what he could remember of the incantation against evil spirits, stumbled back the way he had come. Safe once more inside the court, he leaned a moment panting against the wall. He had fetched the light. He had not been seen. The Kefts and cats had stayed away. Now, if only Gaboo did not come back and catch him at this. He hurried upstairs to the door and thrust the torch into the wall bracket beside it, scooping the clay crumbs into his palm. He spat on them, softened and mixed them with a careful finger, then pressed them into the crack and smoothed the edges as well as he could. A sliver of palm fiber off the torch handle made a poor enough engraving tool, but it was all he had. With it he scratched in the missing bits of the scarab mark. It was done, but his heart sank as he saw how crude the patching looked. It would never pass Gaboo's inspection. I must run away, he thought. Gaboo will kill me. I must go quickly. But where? He had no place to go, and the night was thick with dangers. Stumbling with fatigue and with the trembling weakness which follows fright, he went downstairs once more, extinguished the torch, and replaced it in the oil jar, then flung himself on the familiar roughness of his mat. He would rest here just a moment, then Kefts or no Kefts, he must slip away through the streets and perhaps steal on board a Nile boat bound for Menfe or Bidos in the morning. Perhaps an hour later, a sound in the darkness brought him bolt upright. Had he slept? He must get out of here now, at once. He sprang to his feet, then froze at the sound of the muffled crash upstairs, followed by a stream of oaths. Gaboo was home. He had seen the seal. It was too late. He ran toward the gate, only to whirl and run back again as he heard the upstairs door crash back against the wall, and Gaboo's staggering footsteps sound in the passage. Gaboo was very drunk. He stumbled and half fell down the stairs, cursing at the top of his voice. Ranofer shrank into the darkest corner of the courtyard, wishing he could disappear into the bricks of the wall. He heard an angry, sleepy voice from the next house. "Quiet, son of a pig! Can't a decent man rest?" Gaboo roared some blurred profanity in answer. Ranofer, pressing still closer to the wall, watched the gleam of moonlight on Gaboo's shenty as he waved wavered across the courtyard and into the storeroom. There was the familiar sound of a mug clinking against the water jar, then a tinkling crash of broken pottery. Gaboo emerged and stood a moment, swaying, then, miracle of miracles, he staggered to the stairs and climbed unsteadily up them. A moment later, the door of the upper room banged shut. Stunned at first, Ranofer gradually realized that he was safe. Gaboo had not even noticed the seal. He had been too drunk. The boy's breath escaped in a quivering sigh. He left his corner and went back gratefully to his mat, thanking all the gods of Egypt for the invention of the barley beer. Weary, sore, and still supperless, he fell at last into exhausted sleep. He was roused at daybreak by the usual rude dig of Gaboo's sandal in his rib. Up with you, make haste to the shop. You can buy a loaf on the way. Gaboo tossed a copper to the paving. Ranofer groped for it and rubbed his eyes with his knuckles, stumbled across the courtyard, still half asleep. The cold water on his face helped wake him, and a careless touch on his hurt lip jogged his memory. Something important had happened. Suddenly he was wide awake, remembering everything, the seal, his fear, the golden goblet. Last night he had been too concerned with immediate problems to think about the goblet. Now it filled his mind. He hurried down the street of the Crooked Dog and into the dusty thoroughfare, which was stained pink with dawn and already dotted with the scurrying figures of men on their way to work. He knew he must eat. He was too foggy with hunger now to think what this discovery meant to him. Near the street of the sailmakers, he spied the baker's boy, Kai, emerging from his master's shop with a laden basket on his head. Kai turned at Ranofer's hail and lowered his basket. "Yesterday's baking," he remarked laconically. "No matter," Ranofer retorted. "I have yesterday's hunger." He snatched one of the flat, round loaves and bit ravenously through the glazed crust, handing Kai his copper. "You get 2 for a copper when they're yesterday's," Kai said. He handed over another loaf, started to raise the basket to his head again, and hesitated. "Take 3. Nobody need know of it. You had best put Nile water on that broken lip of yours." With a sympathetic glance, Kai hurried off. Ranofer tucked the 3rd loaf into his sash for midday and went on, more slowly now, toward the shop, eating as he walked. It is the most important thing that ever happened, finding the goblet, he was thinking. I will be free now, and Gaboo will hang head downward from the palace wall. It is right. It is just. He stole a treasure from the precious habitation of that great king. That is a terrible, evil thing to do. I will tell someone right away. I, Ranofer, the son of Thutra, will make the crime known, and then soldiers will come out of the palace and snatch Gaboo, and he will be gone forever. He will never beat me any more, and I will be free of him, and free of the stone shop, and everything will be like a wonderful dream. All Egypt will thank me. Pharaoh himself will thank me. He will summon me to his courtyard for the shower of gold. He will hang golden collars around my neck and order flowers strewn in front of me and tell Zah he must take me as his pupil. I will be rich and happy and eat roast waterfowl every day. I have only to tell the king. An old familiar question broke in on his daydreams. How was he to tell of it? Take the gold goblet from the chest and show it to a soldier? But he would be accused of stealing it himself. Go to some noble, then or seek an audience with a priest or a Baman? Impossible. An insignificant stonecutter's apprentice would get no farther than the first guard. Even if he managed to tell someone, there would be Gaboo to deal with. Would anyone take an apprentice's word against his master's? No. It would be he, not Gaboo, who would end up hanging from the palace wall. It was all the same as before. When he wanted to tell about the wineskins, the questions had no answers, the problem no solutions. Nevertheless, he worried it as a dog worries a bone while he doled out cutting sand for old Zahotep's drill. Suddenly, at mid-morning, the idea came like a flash of sunshine. Zah! Zah the goldsmith was known at the palace itself. The soldiers would trust his word. But would Zah trust Ranofer's word? Ranofer was not sure. Still, Zah might believe if he held the goblet in his hand. Surely he would believe then. The first step was to steal the goblet out of the chest. The sand, boy, the sand, Zahotep's voice crackled with impatience. Do you think this drill is made to toy with like a lotus flower? If Pi sees me idle here... Ranofer hurried forward with the pinch of sand. Zahotep set the bit of the drill into the hole again, still grumbling. If the master were here, I'll wager you'd need no reminding. And where was the master? Ranofer thought as he stepped back. Gaboo had not appeared this morning, though it had been his custom lately to come early to the shop and stay most of the day. He might show up at midday, but if he did not, the noon hour would be a perfect chance to slip away and take the goblet. Gaboo did not show up at midday. After waiting a last nervous few minutes, Ranofer wandered casually from the shop, and once out of sight, ran like a hare. He shrank from every thought of breaking another door seal and repeating the nerve-wracking process of mending it, but there was no other way. Breathless, he reached the courtyard gate and pressed his ear against it. All was still. Cautiously, he stepped inside, padded across the empty court, and listened again. Then he climbed the steps, silent as a wraith. Immediately, he knew that Gaboo was gone, for the door at the far end of the passage was bolted on the outside. But wonder of wonders, it was not sealed. The gods were with him. An instant later, he was inside the room and searching frantically through the wooden chest. The goblet was gone. Dazed by the collapse of all his hopes, yet another time, Ranofer started back to the shop. So certain he had been of finding the goblet waiting for him that even now he could almost feel it in his hands. Where had it gone? Maybe into some melting crucible, though it made him sick all through to imagine it. Maybe into a bale of linen in the hold of some northbound Nile boat, probably Setma's, to be sold in some city downriver, or even in Crete or Phoenicia or Mycenae. In any case, he would never see it again, and soon Gaboo would be wearing a fine new armband and swaggering when he walked. From habit, Ranofer's feet took him along the thoroughfare, past the lane that led between the flower fields toward the river, but his mind was so full of the goblet and his despair that when the ancient suddenly appeared from the lane and hurried toward him, he had to stare a moment to realize who it was. Then he wanted only to escape. He could not tell anyone about the goblet, not yet, perhaps not ever. "Oh, I cannot come to the thicket today," he stammered. "It grows late. I must get back to the shop. Tell Haket I will see him another time." He tried to edge around the ancient, but the old man caught his arm. "Haket has come and gone, young one. I waited in hopes of a glimpse of you. I have something to report." "Aye." The ancient chuckled as Ranofer's attention suddenly riveted on him. "I've been spying again, without really intending it, I confess, and this time I saw something. I did indeed." "You saw something?" Ranofer repeated. "The goblet?" he thought. Could he have seen the goblet? Could he know where it is? "I saw a quarrel, a bitter one." Ranofer, who had opened his mouth to ask straight out about the goblet, closed it again abruptly. The ancient nodded in a conspiratorial manner, winked one eye, and chuckled again as he led Ranofer into the lane where his donkey was snuffling more morosely along the baked roadside ditch in a search of a blade of something green. Come, I must keep an eye on Lotus while I tell you. It was Setma and that Gaboo of yours who were quarreling. Only an hour ago it was, on the edge of the papyrus marsh, close by the fish stocks. I was there cutting my day's load, no more than 3 cubits away from them, though they could not see me for the reeds. Hi, but they were angry. They all but came to blows, and I wished they had. That would have been a fine treat, now wouldn't it, young one? But what did they say, ancient? What was it they quarreled about? Gold, my boy, what else? When 2 rogues like that fall out, you may be sure it is over the price of some skullduggery one is to do for the other. I think that young scamp Haket is right. Setma has been taking whatever Gaboo steals and selling it for him in another city, but it's finished now." "Finished? Ancient, what did you hear them say?" "They whispered, young one. They hissed and spat and growled at each other, but all in whispers, angry as they were. I caught only a few words. One was never. That was your stonecutter. Another was dangerous or danger. It was Setma saying that. Then Gaboo said, a third part, no more, no more. There was more hissing and snarling and a few fine names they called each other, but I heard nothing more of interest until the Gaboo swung away and walked past the edge of the marsh, so close to me I could have touched him. You're finished, he was saying. There are other captains on the river. I stood quiet as an image, and he went by me and away toward the docks. When I looked again, Setma was gone too, and good riddance to them both. It seems quite clear what they're saying, Ranofer said finally. Aye, they've parted, that is certain. No doubt Setma raised his price and Gaboo would have none of it. So what of the goblet? Ranofer was thinking. What will he do with it? Did they have anything with them? He asked cautiously. Anything with them? Oh, gold, you mean? Nay, I think not, young one. I saw no pouch nor packet of any kind. Of course, the reeds were in the way. Gaboo carried something under his arm, but it looked to be a bundle of old clothes, nothing more. I see, Ranofer said, as well as he could, for his heart jumped into his throat. A bundle of old clothes such as he had found in the chest last night? A bundle of old shanties with the gold goblet inside? He left the ancient to his afternoon's reed-cutting and hurried back to the shop. Gaboo was not there. He had not been there during the day either, as Ranofer found out by casual questioning of Zahotep. He did not appear all day, though Ranofer watched for him constantly, his head buzzing with questions as he worked. At the day's end, he hurried home, but Gaboo was not there either. A glance up the stairway showed the door at the top still closed, but unsealed, exactly as it had been at noon. What if he is gone for good? Ranofer thought as he walked slowly toward the storeroom. Nay, he could not be. He would not leave while he is growing rich, while there is so much stealing to be done. The whole valley of the tombs with all the treasure in them. He shivered and stepped into the storeroom. If only someone would catch Gaboo. Suppose a soldier should see him sneaking into the valley, or coming out of it with stolen gold, or should catch him walking about the streets right now with that bundle under his arm. Suppose someone had caught him. It was not impossible, was it? It would explain his absence from the shop all day. His absence now. Suppose he was in Pharaoh's prison this minute, or being dragged before the judges, or... Happy possibilities were still racing each other through Ranofer's mind when he heard the gate crash open and Gaboo's heavy footsteps start across the courtyard. Slowly, Ranofer put down the water jug, feeling his whole spirit wilt and the old burden settle down on him again. The footsteps had almost reached the stair when something occurred to him. Darting to the storeroom door, he peered out cautiously. Gaboo was just turning to climb the stair, but in an instant before the angle of the stairway hit him, Ranofer glimpsed a bundle under his arm. So he had brought the goblet home again, because of the quarrel with Setma, no doubt, because he had so far found no other riverman who would smuggle his treasure out of Thebes. It might be days before he found another, it might be weeks, and meanwhile the goblet would have to stay in that room upstairs, hidden in the chest. The gods have given me another chance, Ranofer thought joyously, and this time I will not bungle things. I will not wait for any days to pass. I will take the goblet tonight, as soon as he goes out. Gaboo came down the stairs again almost immediately, carrying a packet of bread loaves which he had evidently bought on his way home, for they smelled deliciously of new-baked crust. He paused when he saw Ranofer standing in the courtyard. You're home early for a change, he growled. I have only just come, Ranofer said, hoping the lie would be believed. He did not care to set Gaboo's suspicious mind working on any unusual behavior of his. He must remember hereafter to come and go exactly as always, at the same hours, in the same way. Evidently Gaboo did not believe, for he merely grunted and walked on. Evidently Gaboo did believe, for he merely grunted and walked on to the storeroom, jerking his head for Ranofer to follow. There he untied his packet, and leaving the loaves scattered on a shelf, broke the seal on the barrel of dried fish, extracted two, and put them on an earthen plate. Ranofer, who had expected to be asked at once for his coppers, stood holding them in his hand and watching hungrily as Gaboo resealed the barrel, put a couple of loaves on the plate, and taking it with him, started out of the storeroom. Don't you want my coppers? Ranofer asked in surprise. Gaboo halted, turned with an oddly abstracted air, and held out his hand for the coins. An instant later, he turned back again, gave Ranofer one of the fish, and went on to the next storeroom, emerging an instant later with an oil-soaked torch. Without another glance at Ranofer, who was standing astounded with a whole dried fish in his possession, and the knowledge of 3 bread loaves unguarded on the shelf, he climbed the stairs and banged the door of his room behind him. In a moment, Ranofer heard the whining scrape of his fire drill, and he worked to kindle the torch. Obviously, Gaboo had a great deal on his mind, or he would have never forgotten the coppers, or those other loaves, or permitted his gutter-waif half-brother to keep a whole fish for himself. Ranofer thought he could guess the cause for this strange preoccupation, and his guesses gave him considerable satisfaction. It could not be comfortable, having a stolen treasure in one's possession, and no way to get rid of it. It could not be pleasant, either, to realize one had made an enemy of a rogue like Setma, and to wonder how soon and in what way that rogue might inform against one. Ranofer thought about that a moment, hopefully, then decided he dared not count on Setma's malice to help his own cause. It might be a long time before Setma found a way to inform on Gaboo without informing on himself as well, and during that time Gaboo might have found another smuggler, and the goblet would be gone. Nay, tonight is my chance, Ranofer told himself. Let him seal the door or not. As soon as he leaves for the wine shop, I'll go up those stairs, and then I'll take the goblet and run to Zah. Even if it's midnight, I can wait. Meanwhile, he had a feast to eat and plenty to save for morning, and in the enjoyable knowledge that Gaboo had a few burdens of his own for once. Hours later, he finally accepted the dismaying certainty that Gaboo had not the slightest intention of leaving his room at all that night. Very well, he told himself uneasily. I will come here tomorrow at midday. The goblet will still be in his room tomorrow. It must be. Let him hide it ever so well. I will find it somehow. He woke the next morning just in time to see Gaboo cross the courtyard and let himself out the gate, with a bundle of shenties under his arm. Ranofer was up in a moment and after him, pausing only long enough to assure himself of a safe margin of distance between them. Gaboo walked down the street of the Crooked Dog toward the river, turned on a broad street leading southward past the fish docks and ferry landing, with Ranofer never losing sight of him a moment. Presently he turned again at an all-too-familiar corner, and in another 5 minutes was walking straight into the stone-cutting shop. Ranofer stopped in a nearby doorway and stared after him, bewildered. Of all the moves Gaboo might have made, this was the least to be expected. Why would Gaboo take the goblet to his shop? How did he dare to? Where would he hide it? The whole idea seemed insane. As soon as Ranofer felt reasonably safe in doing so, he walked quietly into the shop too, trying to appear as if he had merely come to work as was on every other day. He did not risk so much as a glance in search of Gaboo, but shortly after Pi had set him working at his first task, he saw Gaboo emerging from the scroll room. His hands were empty, swinging by his sides. There was no sign of the bundle. He walked straight through the shop, spoke to Pi a moment at the entrance, then vanished into the street. It was an hour before Pi needed a plan from the scroll room. The instant he bellowed the familiar order, Ranofer was flying across the gritty floor as fast as his feet would move. Once inside the little room, he looked frantically for some sign of the bundle, some place it could be hidden. There was nothing. In the dusky light that filtered through and under the roof thatch, the shelves looked the same as ever, several tiers of them lining 3 of the walls, and a cupboard beside the door on the 4th. Ranofer looked more closely at the cupboard. It was as dusty as everything else in the room, and its small doors were not sealed. Nothing could be in it except tools and cutting sand as always. He looked to make sure, opening the doors gingerly with his finger so that he would leave no signs of his prying in the dust. Inside were tools and cutting sand, no more. Still, Gaboo had come into the room with the bundle and come out without it. Ranofer, came Pi's bellow from the shop. Ranofer snatched the scroll he had been sent to fetch and ran. He would look again. He would search whenever he got the chance. It must be there. It must, he told himself, ready to burst into frustrated tears. But where? How could anyone hide it in those big open shelves? It was not in the cupboard. It was too big to thrust into the scroll. Later that day he searched again, prying hastily through piles of scrolls and hastily restacking them, staring defeated into that dusty, innocent cupboard. Gaboo did not return to the shop that day, and when he came home at sunset he had no bundle with him. For all Ranofer could find of it, the bundle and goblet alike had vanished into the air.